Good evening, everybody. Welcome to CW Live. My name's Chris Webb, Head of Communications at the CW. Delighted to be joined tonight by our General Secretary, Dave Ward, our Deputy General Secretary, Postal, Terry Pullinger, and we've also got our brilliant signers tonight with us. We've got Sarah, who's starting the session, and then we've got Nicola, who will be coming on, and they'll be swapping around every 15 minutes or so. So this is a big week for us. In line with the union's increasingly move to be as transparent and engaging with you as possible, we've got a series of Facebook Lives and CW Lives this week where we're going to go through the agreement we reached with Royal Mail Group in some detail. Starting off today, where Dave and Terry will take you through the overarching principles of the agreement, and you can ask questions around that, but also then breaking down to the functional elements on the rest of the days of the week. So really exciting program, and we want you to come on, ask as many questions as you possibly can. I want to also say that you want people to let us know where you're watching from. So it's always great to see, let us know where your office is, let us know how long you've been a union member, and then we can share some of those comments as the officers are speaking to you. And I also want to say we're having a slight change to our format tonight. So traditionally we would come on, Terry and Dave would give you an update and perhaps set the scene, but the reality is we have already set the scene on this agreement. Very emphatically, we've had live sessions before Christmas. We've had national briefings subsequently last week in the first week back from the break. And also we're writing to you at your home addresses. So we're pretty confident that you know what this deal is all about. What we're doing tonight is handing this session totally to you. 60 minutes of your questions to Terry and Dave. Anything you want covered relating to the main section of the agreement, just to repeat. If you've got delivery questions, for example, they're for Mark Boach on Wednesday. If you're looking at parcel force elements, they're for Davey tomorrow, so on and so forth. And all of the dates have been shared on our social media channels. What we're going to do tonight is go through the main areas of the agreement. So I'm going to throw straight into questions, Dave and Terry. I can see a couple already on screen. I think the first thing I want to say to both of you really is, it is going to be COVID related. Obviously, we're here tonight to discuss the agreement, but I'll come to you first, Dave, if I can, and just a word or two. How does this agreement sit in reality within the COVID environment? Members are struggling, offices are and really high levels of sickness, mail's not going out in some places, and yet we're trying to get out there and promote an agreement. How do those two things come together, Dave, first?
Well, I think first of all, Chris, hi everybody, it's important that we pay our respects to all of our members who have lost their lives during this pandemic, and sadly there have been quite a few, as we know. And I've been notified of one today. So let's make sure we pay our respects to all of the members who have tragically lost their lives. I mean, look, there's nothing more important at the moment than the pandemic and the reality on the ground with our members. So whilst we're here to talk about it, we do recognise and understand that the current situation locally, with infection rates rising everywhere across the country, there must be huge pressures now on the workforce. And what we're here to say tonight is that we have to renew our focus now on making sure that social distancing, PPE, everything that possibly can be done to keep people safe at work needs to happen now. And I know Terry will elaborate on that in terms of where the union is and the officers are in making sure that we perhaps have a session with the members separately on that at some point. So we recognise it's more important than ever. It's where all the thoughts of our members are predominantly going to be at the moment, on how you're coping. We recognise the pressures you're under. Sickness levels have gone through the roof. And the company's got to be sensible about this. And our job is to work with them, with all of our reps, with all of us taking strength from each other to make sure that we keep people as safe as we can at work.
Thanks, Dave. Terry, I mean, following on from that, really, I know you've led some extensive work massively. I was saying to someone outside of the union last week when I saw the National Education Union have done a fantastic job in rallying around our teachers over the last couple of weeks, issued the Section 44 advice to members last week, saying if you don't feel it's safe, then you don't have to continue working. This union issued that advice on the 3rd of April 2020. Just shows how ahead of the game we have been throughout this pandemic. But before we come on, Terry, we was noting that the rise in cases, the rise in sickness, absence. It is a really difficult time for our members. What can we do to sort of reassure them around COVID issues in the coming weeks and months?
Well, I don't know what we can do to reassure people around the pandemic, which seems to have taken an even worse turn than it had before. So the fact that fear or people's concerns have been heightened is no surprise, because I think that could probably be reflected with everybody in society. But of course, our members as key workers are also trying to do a job, at the same time. I think what we would say is it's about refocusing, and it's about ensuring that the standards we put in the first lockdown are adhered to again. So from a union point of view, we had a structure where our EC members were talking to the field, talking to branches, getting right down to local level, talking about whether there's the right PPE, whether there's social distancing in place, whether people are not doing two in a van, etc., etc. Everything you can possibly do to still carry out this crucial work, but keep yourself as safe as you can possibly be. You've got to de-risk. And I mean, my wife is on frontline NHS, so I know exactly how they're having to go to work and their PPE. And so, the concerns are in every household. I think fear at the moment is across everybody, and there's the fear of those that aren't working, that they're not going to have a job and they're not going to do this. And there's still the same fears, I suspect, if they leave their house or go shopping or anything else. And then you've got fear of being a key worker where you're actually out there on the front line. So I think it's the most obvious thing in the world that people are going to be more concerned now and worried now than ever. And the added burden is, of course, if we've got more people off sick, which inevitably we will have, or people isolating, it's how do you get the job done? I've seen people saying that some of the public are kicking off, that their letters are delayed or this is delayed. Well, they're just going to have to grow up, actually, and be patient. And our members, on a day-to-day basis, they can only do what they can do. They can only clear what they can clear. And they shouldn't be doing that without making themselves, putting themselves at greater risk than they would be if they wasn't adhering to all the things that we put in place. And managers should be helping them, supporting them with that as well. And we should be, if necessary, we'll say to Royal Mail, we should campaign on a message to the public. We will get that stuff cleared. We will get that stuff out. But if you're suddenly in an office that finds yourself, with 20 people down or something like that, it's just ridiculous to put extra pressure on people, as well as keeping safe, put extra pressure to say we've now still got to deliver all this. Common sense must prevail, and people individually, you've got to make the right decisions to keep yourself safe while trying to do the job.
Thank you, Terry. Brilliant response. There's already thousands of you online, so really do appreciate that. You can help us spread that further, though. So share the link, get in amongst it, tag your friends in the office, make sure we got the biggest turnout possible, because it's vital we reach as many people as we possibly can. Dave, straight into members' questions. Lots of people asking about the Sunday issue. So you'll see here from Scott, I'm going to put on screen. So why does a Sunday working say initially voluntary? Does this mean it'll be a standard practice in the future? And Steve also says voluntary Sunday workers. What happens if there's no volunteers? I think it's fair to say, and perhaps you I'm sure you both want to say something on the issue of Sunday working, that there's been a little bit of nervousness amongst the membership about that issue around the use of voluntary, and will that become compulsory in the future? What's your view? Firstly, yourself, Dave.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that what the members are voting on is that we will develop Sunday working, but it will be done on a voluntary basis. That's what you're voting on. What we have to do, though, is recognise that, as we move forward over a period of time, and we wanted to be as upfront with people as we could, that we're going to have to tackle these issues. Now, we've got time to do that. And actually, our view is that there may well be opportunities where people, when they see the type of attendance patterns that we might develop over the next couple of years, as this moves forward, that there might be people who actually come forward and say, we want to do that work at this point in time. There'll be opportunities, no doubt, on overtime, scheduled attendance, all the normal things that we do. So our view is we have to look at it from a point of view of, if we're going to secure people's future and their jobs, there is no doubt, and the union agrees with this, that we have to move into what we're terming a 24/7 operation. We can't carry on as a Royal Mail, capture parcel growth, secure jobs for the future and not move to that position. That's the reality of where customers are. We're in the game of trying to get work to keep jobs, but we're also probably the only union in the country that can actually take a position where the agreement clearly says it's going to be done on a voluntary basis. Now, the word initially is the truth in the sense of that's where we are at this point in time. Our commitment to you is to make sure that if we do move forward in any other ways, you're going to be involved in that. There'll be opportunities to talk about that. What we're not accepting, and you're not voting on at this point, is that anybody can be forced to do a Sunday. What we ask you to consider is that in the round, we cannot now continue and build Royal Mail for the future and not move to a 24/7 operation. So we're alive to that. We're alive to the concerns. We're not dismissing any of those concerns, but we're not agreeing to people moving, being told on a compulsory basis to work on a Sunday. That's not the agreement that we've reached.
Thanks, Dave. Terry, I want to ask you your view on the same subject, and I've got some different questions for both of you flowing, but I've got hundreds of questions, so I'm going to have to group them together the best I possibly can. In answering, Terry, also one of the things that's come up, and I'll put this to Mark Boach on Wednesday as well, is if you roll back through the history of our dispute, there was a time when Royal Mail were looking to remove the 1 in 6 Saturdays, all the innovative duty patterns that we've built up over a period of time. And there's a little bit of concern tonight, so we can confirm. I'm assuming that those innovative duty patterns still stand alongside the proposal for the voluntary work on Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, duty patterns are crucial to it. So is a short working week, actually, if we move forward. But before I do that, Chris, I mean, Dave spoke about the protections, what people are not being forced to do. But I want to talk about the strategy as well. We went into a dispute because we had a Royal Mail leadership that actually wanted to shrink us. There was no ambition. And we would have lost jobs. We would have seen the USO reduced. We would have lost the very jobs that we set out to protect. So we've wanted an ambitious vision for this business. We know what's got to be done to protect it, and we've got to open ourselves up. And we live in a 24/7 world. And anyone listening to this or posing the question would have been someone who's either gone shopping on a Sunday, gone out for a drink on a Sunday, gone to a restaurant on a Sunday, gone to the pictures on a Sunday. We live in a 24/7 world now. And the demand of customers, we want the work, we want the revenue, that protects jobs, that gives us pay rises, that gives us security, that pays for our pension and everything else. We cannot just say, by the way, customer, you'll come with us, but we've restricted ourselves to a different world because the world has changed in terms of 24/7. The reason it's voluntary at the moment is because you've really got to test that market and see whether there is a market there, a growth opportunity on a Sunday. If there is, then of course we understand people like their weekends off. But I have to say to you, Dave and I were postal workers over 30 years ago. We've always had nights. We've always had weekend working. We've always had Sundays. You'll have drivers out there now on a Sunday night. How do you think the work gets there on a Monday morning for us to be delivering it? That we've always had workers there, but it's the terms and conditions, the arrangements you have to have. So if you've got a shorter working week, just quickly, and if we're working 7 days a week, then we wouldn't want to try and push people 6 or 7 days a week. We're trying to shorten the working week. We want people to work 3 days a week, 4-day weeks. You can have all sorts of duty patterns. And I can assure you where we have had them, and in a lot of our mail centres, we've had weekend duties. You try and take them off of them people, they fight with their lives to keep that particular rotate. It's not everybody. You wouldn't have every single person working on a Sunday. It would just be staffed. And I have to say to you, when people say no one would want to work on a Sunday, I don't think that's true. We want to create jobs because we're offering proper decent jobs here. And I tell you now, if there was a job that no one wanted to do and it was weekend working or it was rotating days across a 7-day week, etc., there'd be a queue around the block for that job. It's the only way we're going to protect ourselves is to get real on the 24/7, 7 days a week. It's a society we live in. People are shopping. Our competitors are delivering on a Sunday. You know it. We know it. If we're serious about ambition and protecting this great public service and our jobs, we've got to get with it. And that's what we're doing. And that's how we've set out this agreement.
Thank you, Chair. That's brilliant. I've got one more question I want to put to both of you, then I'm going to move into the singular stuff. And it's encapsulated by Nicola here and lots of other people, by the way. And Nicola says, the board have changed their members and a new CEO. How does this affect the agreement between the union and the company? Now, listen, that to me, is a totally understandable worry for our members. If we roll back now, just a few years ago, when the ink was barely dry on the 4 pillars agreement, there was a change in management which brought about a total change in their sort of direction and walking away from the agreement. So I'll come to you, Dave, again first. What is the feeling about these changes today? Is that good, bad, and different for this union and its members? Obviously, bearing in mind, by the way, that we're an independent trade union and we'll deal with whatever is in front of us at any given time.
Yeah, I think the first point to say is that you deal with whoever the CEO of a company is and the management structure, and we're strong enough to do that. But we feel that the change that's been made today is a necessary change. It will be positive for the agreement because there's no way that the company have made that change without having a view about the future. So I think one of the things that they've recognised is that perhaps capability in Royal Mail in terms of creating this mindset change amongst management, that growth is the way to go and that actually you can improve productivity, improve efficiency, obviously improve revenue by growing the business. I think we've got to recognise that they've come to a view, the chairman, the chair of the company and the board, that they need to bring in new skills, is the truth. We're confident that it's not going to affect the agreement. The guy who's been brought in was a previous board member, and he has, as I understand it, particular skills in this area of growth. We'll hold them to account on that. So I don't think people need to be worried about that. This is not the same situation that led us into this dispute. This is actually a situation where the new CEO has been brought in to support the agreement and bring a new skill set and change the focus of the company and the management within it towards growing the business. So it's got to be a good thing from that perspective. But having said all of that, look, we're here as a union because we will always come up from time to time against people who we disagree with. And if we reach that moment at any point in the future, well, we'll deal with that at that point.
Thanks, Dave. Terry, I mean, obviously, having led these disputes we've had with a company, I mean, this one here has rumbled on for like 2 years, let's be honest about it, with some bitter relationships at the top of the company, the top of the union. What's your take on the changes that have been announced today? And secondly, how do, not to put 2 points on, how do you two, first of all, move from like battle mode to now we need to come together and, roll out the agreement? And how does the union and its members move into that place? Because it's a very different place from where we've been the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, that's right. And as I normally say, winning the war is one thing, winning a peace is something totally different. And you have to get yourself in a different place. I mean, how do we do it? Well, we do it because of years of experience of doing it. We don't want to be in dispute mode all our lives, and nor do our members. We want them to do well. We want them to have good pay deals. We want them to have good terms and conditions, and we want them to have security of employment and everything that goes with it. So you're not going to get that if we was in permanent dispute mode, that's for sure. So you have to very quickly get yourself out of that place. Rebuilding trust and relationships is difficult at all levels. So, but it has to start at the top. Now, yes, I could understand people having a strong sense of deja vu. We make an agreement and a new CEO comes in. So this one, even quicker than last time, it was about 3 months last time. So, and a new CEO comes in. But, we'll start talking to the guy. You can only assume, don't forget, there was a different dynamic in these talks where the executive chairman, as he was then, got involved. And I also think our situation changed over the course of the last year. So as terrible as the pandemic's been, the work that our members have been trying to do, this massive workload that we've been shifting this year and are still trying to do, I think it opened people's eyes that the union, we've always been fighting for growth and ambition. And for a while there, the Royal Mail board were on the line of, no, it's all about managing decline, job losses, and just shifting totally into parcels. And you know, for want of a better phrase, the penny dropped, and the psychology changed. The philosophy has to change. What it is we're about. Is it about ambition? Is it about growth? Is it about this? And clearly the agreement reflects that did. There was a genuine understanding. So the CEO move was sort of quicker, took us by surprise. I only learned about it myself yesterday evening. But you can only assume that the board are part of a big decision like that. The board are part of that decision. This guy was on the board. People have only got to look at his CV, and it's all been about growth and digital and retail. And of course, our agreement is also about how can we expand the role of a postal worker on the doorstep, which is the direction of travel. We've seen that on all different types of things in life, people having stuff brought to them. So you can only assume that this guy's been appointed because he's going to bring a lot to the table in terms of the growth agenda. And if he does, and if he's, you know, if he's been on the board for 3 years, he's seen what this union's capable of. He's seen how, passionate we are about what we believe in and about defending our members. Well, it'd be crazy, wouldn't it, if he was to take that job and he's really come with an agenda to once again try and remove the union. Once bitten, twice shy, surely. So, but we're optimistic. So we're so keen to get on and repair the damage of the last 2 years. And if this guy's up for that and we do well, then he'll become a star, won't he? So itch your wagon to a star, mate.
Fantastic. Thank you, Terry. Dave, Terence here says, are we going the same way as any other cheap courier competition? So, I mean, obviously, we would, totally refute that. And I think the agreement stands against that. But what would your view be on that?
No, it couldn't be more different, Terence, in terms of where the agreement is. And if you look at the deal, you can download the full terms of the agreement. You'll see that the strategy section of it has seen a massive shift from where Royal Mail were previously. I know the members will always look initially at the pay, the short working week, the job security. But for us, the future of the company hinged on whether or not we had the right strategy. Royal Mail did not have the right strategy. So where the company were, what the dispute was fundamentally about, was the fact that they'd made a decision. They'd gone to the stock market, they'd gone to their shareholders, and they'd introduced a new strategy that wasn't agreed by the union. And that strategy was definitely about creating a separate company, and anything that grew in the future, they'd shift into the separate company. And they were going to bring in insecure employment models to do that work. The problem, we don't agree with those models anyway, but second to that, the reality is that they would have left Royal Mail to wither on the vine. It was a strategy about abandoning Royal Mail, abandoning letters, abandoning the role that workers currently do. What the agreement has done is shift that massively to exactly where we wanted it to be. One, it set out very clearly that growth will now be done through the core business. And yes, that will mean change. We're being upfront about that. But these are the things that are going to create jobs in the future. And we have got to rebalance the operation now to reflect the change between parcel volumes and letter volumes. But what we've also said in the agreement and committed Royal Mail to is not to abandon letters. And that's important. The USO still has a big role in wider society as a social value. It's a big contributor to the UK economy. And we want to try and develop ways of maintaining letters. But we have to recognise that letters have declined overall. You may not always see that directly in your own office, although I think most of you are beginning to see it. You're certainly seeing the growth in parcels. But the third bit of the strategy, and this is where we believe that the future is going to be about expanding the role of postal workers. Now, this is an area we need to talk about going forward. But there are so many opportunities to build on the real advantage that Royal Mail has over the competitors. So the biggest competitor, in a nutshell, is Amazon. And one of the things we've been able to convince the business of is that, we own trust on the doorstep. The work that our frontline posties do is where the biggest connection is with customers. And it would be crazy to have abandoned that workforce in favour of some other insecure employment model. What we've got agreed is that there isn't going to be a spread of insecure employment models into the core business. We're going to be doing the work on our terms and conditions and continuing to improve the terms and conditions. So it's the right strategy for the future. We've turned them around. We've got a good deal here. We've got to grasp that opportunity now over the next couple of years and grow the business.
Thanks, Dave. Terry, sticking with the job security and a little bit of pay if I can. I was reading earlier on today that we're now at 800,000 people who have been, tragically made redundant since the start of the pandemic. Point made here by Graham, 1.6 million public sector workers are getting a pay freeze, a pay rise, and 1 hour less to work would be envied by many. And I'm sure lots and lots of our members would agree with that. But we have got some members in the comment who are saying that pay rise isn't enough. The union hasn't secured enough in this agreement in terms of job security and pay. What would you say to those individuals?
What can I say that on here? Well, I don't know who these people are who post these questions, but I can only say we fight hard for what we get, and as negotiators, you always have to take that sort of thing on the chin. That it's just not enough. I don't accept that. When you do the analysis, I think most people, and we've had so many comments since we made the agreement, come into the union, which is saying what a great agreement. People didn't expect what we pulled out there. And I would say to you, have a look at what's going on around you. You're talking about, people are really getting worried now that in April there could be another 1 million people unemployed. You've just said about public sector pay freezes, which they've had now for a number of years, by the way. I've already said my wife is frontline NHS, and there was years they were just getting the 1%. Do you remember pay rise each year, just 1%? So there's never been like a decent negotiation around that. I would say to people, quickly Google the British Gas and what's going on there at the moment. So in British Gas, remember this, at the start of this year, or in April of this year, so right at the start of the pandemic, Royal Mail were reporting a loss. And so was Parcel Force. And our argument was right from the get-go, that is not the reason. If we go into a plan, if you accept our logic of growing this business, you will grow revenues and the situation will improve. We know that we can't go and get pay rises and protect jobs if the company carried on running at a loss. But we still made the case for that. And we've won the day on our agreement. In British Gas, they're telling people that you're effectively going to be sacked and you can be re-employed on a different contract, a separate contract. And that's happened before to workers, and the British Gas workers are on strike at the moment because that's what they're being told. You take it or leave it. Your job finishes, your current contract finishes, you can still have a job, but you've got to sign a different contract of employment on less money. Can you imagine that being said to us? And don't forget, we were being told we would only get pay deals. We wouldn't have proper pay bargaining. We'd go down the road of pay deals subject to arbitrary performance figures that the company would set. We haven't done any of that. We've got a pay rise. We got another hour off the shorter working week. And I have to say to you, in our estimates since April 2018 to April this year in this agreement, we've effectively improved the terms and conditions of our members by 16%. Nobody is getting that. So anyone who's out there suggesting it's not enough, then I don't know what rock they're living under, and I don't know what's going on around them, because the people in their families or their friends must all have amazing jobs, because every single family in this country is being touched at the moment by the world of work and the damage and the spiral downwards for all workers in this country. We have just gone in a different direction, and I think we're a standout on our own for that at this moment in time.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you also to everyone who's tuned in so far. The numbers have been really high and consistently high, but you can help us by sharing the link, tagging your colleagues, and getting as many fellow co-workers from your offices online as possible. Let's reach as many members as we possibly can tonight. And the other thing I think we all pride ourselves on, certainly the union prides itself on with these sessions, is that we don't come on here and pick out a couple of questions which say, how well Dave and Terry have done, how fantastic they are, and how great at their job that they are. We do see lots of those comments, but you know what? We're not really into that sort of stuff. But we do challenge the difficult questions head on. So, for example, another one that's come to you first on this one, Dave, from Neil Jones says, the pay deal is great, but is it not just a carrot to get the agreement through that still has a lot to be divulged in regards to the detail of efficiency and changes? And there are quite a few members, basically, and not quite a few, but there are some members saying to the both of you tonight, that coming to you first, Dave, is the union selling us a pup here, getting our vote, and then we'll come with more dramatic and dangerous and far-reaching changes in the coming months? What would you say to that, Dave?
No, this is an agreement that secures our future if we approach it in the right way, and that includes Royal Mail doing that. We've deliberately gone for a deal that's about principles. And if you read the agreement, one of the things it says about those principles is that everything that takes place going forward, of which we've got to be honest, there will need to be much more detailed discussions. That's always the way. We're trying to turn an industry into something for the future that's going to create jobs, rather than keep losing jobs. So there's a lot of work to do. You have to have principles. And what the deal says is that all of those subsequent discussions must come back and be in line with the principles that we've agreed. That's a strength for us on this occasion. Sometimes some of these deals that people look for all the detail in, I get that. We understand that people will always have that view. And look, we'll have to deal with some of that as and when we get to those points. But, the principles in this deal are very strong. And they're fair. It's a good deal as well for the company. It's a good deal for customers. But we have got all the basics in place here, more than any other organisation in the country at the moment. And therefore, the principles are the right ones. When you deal with things going forward, we get some questions a bit later about the opportunity for local people to shape their own future. And for us not to be afraid of that. The productivity and efficiency is probably the biggest move in a sensible way under this deal than we've seen for a number of years. It puts technology and efficiency and productivity in a much more sensible way than what we've been seeing from the company. So we're confident on all of those things that actually this deal is the best chance we've ever had to build this business and keep our members in work, but better jobs where you can manage your workload. And we want to get into talking about those things as we move forward. So don't fear the future. We're strong enough to deal with that. And what we would certainly never do is try and sell people something because there's something coming down the road that suddenly, we weren't going to tell you. We've been up front on that. We're strong enough to deal with the future. Get behind the union, get behind your local reps, and you'll see the change in culture as well coming through as part of this deal.
Thanks, Dave. Terry, one of the questions that's got loads and loads lined up for you guys, by the way, which is fantastic. One of the questions that people are showing genuine concern is around the ballot itself. People are saying, will the ballot papers get to offices and get to members due to the crisis in some offices with regards to the pandemic? Have the union factored in enough time and the facility for members to vote in this ballot?
Well, we'll test that as we go, Chris. There is the online facility as well that we're doing. So, we normally know that type of thing by the sort of return you're getting. We won't know whether they're yes or they're no votes, but we would certainly have an idea of what the return is, and we'll keep an eye on that. And if it was evident that it's not getting through and it's because of the pandemic or the pressure that's on in terms of the post, etc., then we'll take that into account. And if we had to extend it by another week or whatever, we would do it. But obviously, if we are getting a good return, and we would anticipate a yes vote. We'd certainly encourage everybody to vote yes so that we can get on with this deal. Then that's where a lot of members will want to be, because then, of course, the benefits of the deal immediately start to flow through. So we wouldn't want to artificially hold it up. We'll keep an eye on it. If that was a problem, then we would have the facility to extend the ballot period.
Thank you, Terry. I'm going to come to both of you on this one, actually, because it's quite an interesting point that's been made several times. Maybe it's people misrepresenting the agreement and misreading it. But the issue in the agreement where power is handed back for our reps and local managers to determine their own future in discussions over a range of issues. Some members are getting nervous about that. I'll come to you first, Dave. And people are saying, like, is that going to lead to Royal Mail taking advantage of us locally? Everything should be nationally. We shouldn't be doing that. Can you explain, both of you really, why you think it's a good thing that the union has that influence locally and the opportunity to influence? Dave?
Well, I mean, Terry and me both know that it's obviously a good thing. And if you were sitting in the room when these talks were going on, some of you guys, it was the union that was pushing that argument. And I think some of the managers in Royal Mail fear that, well, a lot of them fear that more than anything in this deal. But if we want to change culture in the business, you've got to get away now from the idea that somebody sitting at the top of the business sets out, this is how things are going to be done. And there's no leeway, no flexibility to take into account, genuine local circumstances, whether that be existing attendance patterns that people have fought for locally that they prefer, whether that be the reality of what is achievable in terms of workload at a local office level. So I think it's time to really think this through. And I would say to any of our reps today who are watching this, who are in a position to influence this debate as well, the best deal you can ever get, you get a national deal. What you have to do then is work with the members, and our reps know this, they're as good as any union, better than most in the country, because no other union, by the way, even has this debate at a local level. We're probably the only one that does, where there's genuine power in terms of trying to shape what happens in your local office. Let's go at this with a different mindset. Let's recognise that the future is going to be better the more that we're engaged locally than letting managers dictate it either at a regional level, a national level. And me and Terry and the officers that were involved in these talks, we fought hard for this principle. And particularly with technology, and the fact that they can see you, everything you're doing, every minute of the day, they can track you. Let's be honest about that. And we're saying local solutions need to be asserted over one simple national way of doing things that may not take account of any local circumstances. So see it as a positive. It's also going to be the way we're going to grow the business. Unless Royal Mail drop this idea that everything works like clockwork on a flip chart or on a computer in their offices, we're never going to grow the business. They need to give you the chance to be involved in shaping your future. This is a positive thing. The union's strong enough through our structures to deal with it. Negotiations are the way forward. Yes, the technology can be used and it can inform better discussions, but we think this is a big plus in the deal.
Terry, I mean, ask you for your view on the sort of local influence, is that versus national, and pick up on a point here made by Mark Pearson. We don't have a union rep at Wakefield management do what they want. I think Mark perhaps is doing a semi-volunteering there to be the rep at Wakefield. But how do we get that balance right? And does this agreement get the balance right?
Well, first and foremost, we are a workplace trades union, and too many other unions are not in that position. They haven't got a rep on every workplace, on every shift. We've got that by right, by our agreements and our legal contracts. So our people have got the best representation possible. Now, we can only secure those agreements, whether you get someone to stand for the position or not. What do you do then locally? There's enough of you working there. One of you should take it on. And actually, when someone has got the minerals to take it on, help them. Don't just slag them off because they're the rep, but that you drive a rep out of the position. Because I tell you now, that is something other workers haven't got and would love. the ability to go immediately to a rep and get representation instantly. They haven't got to go away and phone a convener and wait to see them for 3 weeks or whatever. We're a workplace trade union and we defend that. But also, we said during the 4 pillars dispute, most of our people go work, you know, in the same pile of bricks, and they probably have done for years. And their judgment of this union and Royal Mail is in the workplace, is under the roof in the workplace. And the 2 key people, the representative and the manager, have got to have autonomy to do the right things for those people under the roof. We know we've got the basics that we've got to achieve, but the local agreements that suit local circumstances, allow them to deal with that, allow them to build that respect with the membership, with the employees, and then you improve the culture. So Dave's right, we've argued hard on this. This command and control that someone, you know, hundreds of miles away, you can pick up a phone and they'll tell you what the decision is and what you should do on that day, is absolute nonsense. And all it does, it causes bad feelings, it causes a breakdown in relationships locally. We're saying to people, we want a better culture. This is part of it. Give people that autonomy locally and let people judge the union and management when they've got true autonomy to make decisions locally. We give them the support, IR training. You know, we're going to do joint training and management. We're going to roll that out again so the manager and the rep know what their roles and responsibilities are. Branches, everybody's got where we get a new rep. Let's give them a full support, you know, when they're going in. Let's create committees. But I'd say this to the membership. If you're sitting there without a rep and someone puts themselves forward, you know, they don't know whether they're going to be the greatest. They've got so much to learn and things like that. Give them support. Don't immediately get on their back and try and push them out of the job. Make them stand. Because I tell you now, anyone who's prepared to be a local rep, as far as we're concerned, they'll do for us, because you've got to have something about you just to put yourself forward. So, you know, let's get behind our local reps, but let's give them some power. Let's give them the opportunity to genuinely reflect the needs of that workplace, of that workforce, and the local manager has to work with them and come up with solutions together, not judgment or a decision made hundreds of miles away from some no-neck person who just don't really know, don't know the people, don't know the office, don't know the layout, don't know the challenge, just makes a decision that everyone else has then got to live with. If that's the type of union we wanted to be, we would have done a different deal, but it isn't. We want a workplace union, and we insisted that they've got to have that autonomy at local level.
Thank you, Terry. And also worth remembering that those people are volunteers and give up their own time. And most of them, you know, in delivery office, for example, are prepping and doing their delivery and dealing with all the hassles. So do a fantastic job. So big shout out to all of our local reps doing an amazing job, being the backbone of this trade union. I want to get into, if I can, a bit of this dialogue about part-time workers. So somebody has just put in the comment box, you know, there's nothing in this agreement that for part-time workers. I'm not sure that's true. Nothing apart from having your job protected, getting a pay rise, getting another pay rise when the shorter working week comes in. So that's obviously clearly not true. But there is a recurring theme in the comments around people who are saying, I've been working full-time but haven't been offered a full-time job. I'm going to come back to you if I can on this first, Terry. What would you say to those members who have been, maybe even some of them, for all through the pandemic have been doing full-time hours but can't seem to get a full-time job? Does this deal end that? Does it give people the opportunity to make that permanent?
Well, listen, even in the 4 pillars agreement, in all our agreements, we've had the right to argue for those people to have their hours increased. In the 4 pillars agreement, we went further, because even if it wasn't permanent, you could do that on a temporary basis, which would ensure that they still got their average holiday pay and stuff like that when they went on holiday for the hours they've been working, which is something else we're dealing with and having to go to court about and everything else. So those part-timers, what they're doing basically, they're getting extra hours, aren't they? And they're doing them on a regular basis, but they're still part-timers and they would want full jobs. We've got a mixture. We've got part-timers who want to be part-time. Not everyone wants a full-time job. But the ability to protect a part-timer who does extra hours is in our agreements. Now, we've been in dispute for 2 years, so you'd understand a rep not being able to get anywhere with that. But we've got to put those disciplines back in place. We've referenced part-timers in the agreement. It's absolutely not true to say there's nothing in this for a part-timer, because you're right, they get the pay rise, and then when the second hour shorter working week goes in, their hourly rate goes up again in accordance with the shorter working week. So there's a financial benefit there, but they still got the benefit of a pension. This year we're hoping to see our new pension scheme come in, the legislation to be cleared, the first of its kind in this country. I've got to be honest with you, Chris, that's why I'm sitting here boiling over really about that question about we're selling our people a pig in a poke here with this agreement. This union's never done that. We wouldn't have fought for the last 2 years for employment, standard living and retirement security to then sell our members down the river. And I think our track record is so long now and so special that people should learn to trust this trade union, because we haven't given up on anything. So part-timers are not missed out of that debate. We're adamant about that. Part-timers should be treated right. Absolutely, they should be treated right. And as this agreement rolls out, as the IR framework rolls out, the training on it, rather the IR training, we will be re-emphasising those aspects of the agreement that are there to protect part-timers already, but also going forward. Where there's the ability and their people want it, they should have the option to increase their hours permanently. No doubt about it.
Thank you, Terry. And it's great to see so much support for the union in the comments. So if you are beyond the union, you're proud to be a member, then stick it in the comments and we'll try and share the best of those in the last few minutes of the session. Dave, I want to come on to something that I know both yourself and Terry have been really passionate about, is reversing Royal Mail's strategy from one of managing decline to an ambition to grow the company. Getting lots of members saying, we like that, it sounds good. What does that look like in practice, Dave?
Well, I think this is the most exciting part of the deal, because we've said to the company that we were never going to sign up to something that set parcel growth in another company. We won that argument. We've now gone on to say that there's much more we can do beyond parcels. So it's important that we play our part in thinking this through. And, I personally believe that there are so many opportunities to create better jobs than what we've got now, if we recognise how strong the connection is between the local postie and the customer. And that Amazon, right? They got so many advantages in the size of their business, their purchasing power, their online presence, all of those things. What they haven't got, the one thing they would love to have, is what we've already got, which is that connection between the frontline postie and the customer. What we've got to do now is leverage that. What does it mean? Well, I think it means things like developing new local-to-local services. If Royal Mail wants to grow, it has its national service, which we'll protect and defend, but it's got to have the flexibility to relate to local businesses. And this deal is talking about that. It's also got to be able to see itself in its role in community. So we argued strongly that Royal Mail should present itself during the pandemic as almost the fifth emergency service. Well, that's with an eye to, one, recognising the role that postal workers already play and the work that they go beyond their normal duties in supporting and helping people. Let's formalise that where we can, in a manageable way, with workload that we think about and develop. If we get our heads around this aspect of the agreement, we are going to create a postal service where the status of postal workers' jobs will go up even more than it is today. So it's an exciting part of the deal. It's probably the hardest bit of the deal in terms of making that a reality. But what we've done is put ourselves in pole position with the company to develop those ideas. And I think the other important thing to remember here is that they've now signed up to the postal workers themselves using their local knowledge. And we're going to come and have a look at ways of doing that and to create those jobs for the future. So this is an exciting part of the agreement. Might seem a little bit far off for some people, but it's exactly how we need to deal with the future. Expanding the role of a postal worker is what this agreement is all about.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Dave. And we've had lots of people saying how proud they are to be members of the union. A couple of you have put in thank yous to your local reps as well, which is fantastic to see. So don't be shy. If you want to give a shout out to your local rep in the comments now, I think that will be really fitting for all the hard work they've done, not just over the last year, but over many, many years for some of our fantastic local reps. Terry, on the other side of that growth debate is the introduction of new technology. Some of which members will clearly welcome, some of which they may worry about. We see the big brother, if you like, in operation in some of the other parcel couriers throughout the postal industry. What is your take on new technologies? Things like swiping in, swiping out. This big thing. Will that mean I've got to work until my time? Will that mean they're telling me if I finish 10 minutes early yesterday, I needed to get that back the next day? How do you see the balance on new technology for our members in the coming months and years, really?
Well, I think you've probably hit the nail on the head when you speak about balance. We can't be in denial about new technology. We're sitting on here, look, because of new technology, being able to talk to all of our members and tell them about the agreement. And I expect a lot of them are watching it on their phones or whatever they're doing. So, it's a reality, the new technology. The big struggle for trade unions everywhere, and not just in the UK, Dave will tell you, from Europe and across the world, the big battle for trade unions is how that technology is used. Is it used to dehumanise the workplace? Is it the only decision-making process out there? Is it used to play Big Brother and, track people around all the time and observe them and pull them up if they were, in the toilet for 2 minutes more than the business believes they should be, all that sort of stuff? They're real dangers. And we've seen some of that in some of the reports that have come out of Amazon. Now, Amazon have had to sort of make adjustments to try and clean up their image a little bit because they were getting slaughtered on it. But I dare say working in an Amazon warehouse would still feel like that. You've only got to read the agreement and read the bullet points in the agreement. We've maintained and continued to protect our members from new technology. I say maintained and continued because we've had digital tachographs for years. Our LGV drivers are tracked. Everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone knows what speeds they're doing, what time they arrive, and everything else. Handheld technology in parcel falls. We've had it for years. We've got handheld technology now in Royal Mail, and that creates data. It creates information. Everything does in the modern day. But in things like swiping in and out, you swipe in and out, you clock in and out, you sign in and out. It's all the same thing unless it's abused. And so what we've maintained, they're saying they wanted to replace the paper systems of people signing in and out and put in, swipe systems, new technology systems, remove all the paperwork, etc. So we've agreed with that, with the protections. I don't think how you can argue that. In fact, we've got it in a lot of our sites now. A lot of our mail centres, you have to have a card to get in and swipe before you get in, and it's security and it's everything else. So as long as people are doing their job properly, then I ain't got nothing to worry about. But we've even made arrangements in that agreement because we know in places like delivery offices, sometimes locally, and give them that autonomy, there has to be deals done where you're asking a postal worker to help out and do more than the workload they would do in their normal hours. So they may take that extra work out with them. It may be someone else's route, covering a bit of sick or whatever. Then they would take an element of work and them and the manager would agree what the hours are for that work. And no one's going to, if they finish a bit early on that, then that's part of something they've agreed locally. That's actually referenced in the agreement. So it's common sense approach. I'll tell you one thing, what I hope comes out of swiping in and out is the people who keep coming in early and keep dragging the job down or giving time to the employer that they're not even getting paid for. If it puts that thing right and people are doing the job properly, plus the protections we're going to put in place with productivity expectations and everything else, then what we're talking about, we have defended the old age principle of a fair day's work with fair day's pay. And we believe with them words we've got, which I tell you now, and I know other unions, if they were listening to this and say they're having themselves again, but I genuinely believe they are trade union and they are industry leading commitments about how technology won't be used and how we will not dehumanise the workplace. So for us, in the agreement, it says it, the key relationship is a local rep, local manager, and it will be human decisions. They will look at the data produced by technology, factor in all local circumstances, and the final decision will be a human decision. That's a massive achievement by this trade union. Now, our members may not see that, But in the world that we exist in, and certainly Dave and his role at the TUC and the wider labour movement, he'll tell you. I'll tell you that is industry leading. Most unions will be looking at that and seeing what we've achieved there. And we've done it for you. We've protected you, but we cannot walk away from new technology. We would put ourselves in a ridiculous position if we did. The same as if we was to put ourselves in a position to turn away work because people don't want to work on a certain day or a certain time. We will not be turning away work because there's always someone who needs that work and needs a decent job.
Thank you, Terry. Brilliant. Last couple of questions, and I'm going to ask you to sum up. And a reminder to members, we've seen many functionally specific questions, stuff about deliveries, parcel force, distribution, etc. Sessions all the rest of these weeks. Check out the times and dates of those on the Facebook page or YouTube or on Twitter, and you can find all of the relevant details. Come back again tomorrow night. Join us with Davey Robertson and Wednesday with Mark Boach. Dave, I'm going to come to you. Quite a few questions on where are we with the USO?
Yeah, well, I mean, where we are with the USO is that this agreement gives us as much protection as we're going to get. And what I mean by that is that we've committed the company to maintaining letters as a key important part of their business. And we're going to develop a joint strategy with the company on how we're going to protect the USO going forward. What, since the negotiations were taking place, is that the regulator put out what it calls its user needs report. That's where you would have seen in the lead up to the agreement some coverage on the USO. Now, the honest position is that the USO, in terms of being sustainable, purely based on what we do now, that's not going to be economically possible in years to come. We have to recognise that. What we want to do is grow new products through the universal service. We want to develop that strategy with the business. And I think it's possible to keep the USO at 6 days, but it might mean changing some of the products that go through it. I mean, the other side of it is actually we want to deliver things in some ways. Some of the aspects of the USO, might need to be extended where there's priority services that could be delivered over 7 days. So I think the product mix is where we need to look at, but we'll do everything possible to defend the USO going forward. Ultimately, look, let me say this, it's a decision that government make. It goes through Parliament. And if there was an attempt to undermine the USO without any plan for the future, then we would defend that. And our agreement gives us the right to do that. And I would expect Royal Mail to do what it can to make sure that we protect the USO going forward for the whole of the country. It has a wider social and economic value. It would be silly of them to abandon it. And our agreement commits us all to making sure that letters also continue to be part of the USO. But there'll be a debate with the regulator. The union's strong enough to deal with that debate in the right way, and we're confident that this deal helps us do that.
Thank you, Dave. Terry, a couple of perennial classics from you for your last question before I come back to you and Dave to sum up. One, I'm going to put two, if I can, two questions to you. One is, will there be any EVRs off the back of this agreement? And the second one is, when will we get our back pay? I've left that beauty till last, but it's a couple of members have been asking that. And also in that back pay question answer, Terry, if you could cover off, because a lot of members are asking if back pay will be paid on overtime allowances, etc., or just basic pay. Over to you, Terry.
You sure this ain't you, Webby, trying to wind me up?
No, it's definitely not. No, it's definitely not. No, and I've left it till last as well.
First of all, on the voluntary redundancy, we as a union are negotiating. We're not negotiating job losses. We're negotiating to grow jobs. But we've always understood with our, going back years now, the growth and stability agreement, the moment we knew we were going to be privatised, I think people sometimes forget that we are a private company. It's a private company that we're achieving these deals in. We've had our NTSF agreement, which there's voluntary redundancy terms if it is required. So if the changes going forward meant in any particular office there was a surplus, then we would deal with that in line with our agreement. But at the start of these negotiations, we was reporting, the company was talking about 14,000 job losses and serving an HR1 on us, which is where they have to inform the government about thousands of redundancies in Royal Mail, etc. And that has totally changed. That has totally turned around, and that's the way we want it. So we don't negotiate redundancies. We negotiate jobs and we protect jobs. But where there is a surplus because of operational change, which does happen at times, then of course we make sure we've got the right terms in place to protect our members, whether they're taking voluntary redundancy or whether it's protection because they're changing shift and all that sort of stuff, or changing office or whatever. And all those protections are still in place. So that's the bit we concentrate on. About the pay, the other issue on the pay, I mean, it was one of the things I was going to touch on in summing up. When I say about us being a private company, not only have we secured a proper pay deal for everybody, but we successfully argued to have it backdated till April, Chris. And originally, any offer we had from Royal Mail on pay was only on the base pay. It wasn't on allowances, it wasn't on overtime, wasn't on SAs and all that. And the pay deal we've got is backdated and it flows through to everything. So once we've got the ballot result, and it's a yes vote, because I genuinely believe it will be. I think people would be crazy not to back the deal. Once we've got that, then we will already be saying to Royal Mail in anticipation, you should be preparing to press the button so that weekly paid and monthly paid get all their deserved and all their owed as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Terry. I'm going to ask you both now, if I could, to just take a moment or two to sum up where you think we are, commencing with yourself, Dave.
Yeah, okay. So look, thanks everybody for coming on tonight. As we started out, we do understand that the current situation with the pandemic is going to be uppermost in people's minds, and making sure that we can deal with that as safely as possible with all of you guys at work and all your families. But have a look at this agreement. And, what the CWU wants to do more than anything is engage with our members. So, we're a union now that want you to look at this deal. You'll be getting a letter from us setting out, all the key points in the deal. You can download the agreement fully and go through it line by line, easily done. You'll be getting a link where you can do that. And let's have a think about our future. So the deal, there's no better agreement around at the moment when it comes to things like pay, job security, and the issues on the shorter working week. They're all great achievements. But, we're being upfront with you. This is also about change, and making change happen is actually a point at the moment that is in our interest. It is time, if we want to build jobs for the future, that we've got to grasp the reality now that we need to move the industry on. What the deal does is set out the best possible strategy for us to do that with your interests firmly looked after on everything. So, I want to thank everybody, because we couldn't get agreements like this if we weren't a strong union, if we didn't have all of those reps at workplace level that have shown solidarity with the union going forward. And the other reason we're in a position to secure the deal is because of the efforts of our members in dealing with the reality of the changing volumes of parcels. That's been tough, but we hope that you will see that this agreement is one for the future. We genuinely believe this is not just about securing the future. This is about creating better jobs in the future as well. And this is the right deal for you as members. Please get behind it, but have a look at it, see all aspects of it, and ultimately make sure you vote, and hopefully we'll return the right result, and then we build our future from there. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave. Terry, some closing thoughts from you.
Well, just to say, and it probably comes across when we're dealing with some of the questions, because I don't think it's time to mince our words at all. We have fought so hard for the opportunity to shape this business and continue to defend what we believe is the concepts of a decent job, and security is massive in that. And our members will see that going forward. Job security in the world that's ahead of us is going to be huge. And if we can defend year on year the fact that our members, when they go to bed, have all the other things they're worrying about, and everyone's got stuff in their life, the one thing they're not worrying about is where the next tenner's coming from, or am I still in a job in 2 weeks' time? If we can continue to offer that security, as we've done all the years, this great union, then we will continue to do it. So on this agreement, Chris, I'm proud of it, and I defend it proudly, because actually it's our members' agreement, because Dave just said it. We would never have got it if our members hadn't stuck with us for the last 2 years through one of the most adversarial moments of our history, really. There aren't many unions that sustain a two-year dispute, and we've come out with these benefits and these protections and the security going forward, and we haven't cost our members a penny in industrial action. Now, that's terrific trade unionism. You make yourself that strong that the power of you as a group enables us to get a deal. And I think that when I say the penny dropped on the way forward for this business, and that we were right about growth and expanding the role of a postal worker to protect this great public service, I think the other key bit that the board realised was, if you are going to move this business forward, you have got to do it with the trade union, not in spite of them, because their members are too loyal and they're too strong. And we've proved it time and again. So it's your agreement. We're defending this is your agreement. And I want to say that we talk about part-timers, and I don't know how many thousands there are, but what I do know, we only had about 4,000 or 5,000 members in Parcel Force, and this union could have left them hanging, because Parcel Force was gone for the second time in their history. They could have gone into extinction, Parcel Force. And once again, we have stepped up and defended Parcel Force, which is a great business and a great brand. And the whole of this union stood together and ensured those people were protected. Now, that shocks employers at times. Listen, if we can get a deal, but don't worry about them 4,000. This union does everything in its power not to leave anyone behind. And this agreement, apart from protecting you, really positions us and gives us the opportunity to shape the future you deserve. Yes, there will be change, but anyone who don't think things have changed over the last 30 years are in denial. Everything in our lives has changed, but we're trying to maintain, in this changing world that seems to hurt workers rather than benefit workers, we're trying to maintain the traditional trade union things that we fight for, which is job, standard living, retirement security. And once again, we've done it. And if we're attacked again, we would stand up again. Hopefully we won't have to, because if they listen to us in shaping the way forward and you work with us, you will still have some of the best jobs in this country going forward. And that's what we should be so proud about. But you should be. I defend it passionately, not because we've done it, because we wouldn't have got it without you. It's your agreement. And we've done the right thing. We've secured all our policies. Back this agreement, and let's now grasp this opportunity.
Thank you, Terry. So firstly, I want to say thank you to our brilliant signers. Both Nicola and Sarah done a fantastic job, not only keeping pace with the session and all of your questions, but also deciphering 3 rather strange accents on the session. So thank you to you. You've done a fantastic job. Also want to say thank you to Dave and Terry for giving up their time, as they always do and always willingly do, to engage with the members. As we said at the start, we don't see the questions in advance. We've tackled all of the difficult subject matters tonight, and hopefully you've got some food for thought ahead of voting for the agreement. To Mark, who said he doesn't want to work Sunday, he wants to play golf, and he wants to know if Dave and Terry work Sundays. And I want to say to you, Mark, it's AGM season now, and I think Dave and Terry will be working every single Sunday. So I'm sure if you want to guest speak at a couple of meetings, then Dave or Terry will be happy to replace you, mate, and have a round of golf at your local course. But no, it's been a brilliant session. What final thought I'll leave you with is we need to now get into the functional stuff, because this is the most transparent process we've had when going out and taking an agreement to you. So tomorrow at 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock, join myself and Davey Robertson for a session on Parcel Force, distribution, processing and logistics. And we really look forward to seeing you. So from myself, Terry and Davis, good night.
Thanks very much, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.